Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. I hope you are warm and ready. Let's begin. Over 10 years ago, my family and I resided in a small 2-story apartment building, and it was within those walls that most of the unexplained occurrences in my life took place. To this day, I insist to my mom that the place had to be haunted. The more I tried to find logical explanations for these happenings, the less sense they made. My younger sister and I, aged 15 and 13 respectively, shared a room with bunk beds. We had a ceiling fan and one of those large gray plastic floor fans, which you powered on with a knob on the back. As the eldest, I naturally slept on the top bunk. Our apartment was situated so close to the adjacent building that our one window provided no view of the outside world, only the brick wall of the neighboring structure. There was no natural light in our room. It was one night, in the dead of night, when suddenly loud noises erupted from what seemed to be the floor fan. It was as if a full-grown adult was repeatedly slamming the fan on the floor or jumping on it like a trampoline. The noise jolted me awake, leaving me speechless. As the noise subsided, I tried to convince myself that I was still dreaming, lost in some strange and reckless illusion, until my sister spoke up. "What was that?" she asked. I reached for the ceiling fan latch and turned on the light, cautiously peering over the bed rail at the floor where the fan sat, perfectly intact but powerless. Judging by the sounds, I expected to see the fan in pieces, or at least find some malfunction with its blades that would explain the instability. My sister and I stayed awake for hours that night, unable to find a logical explanation for what had happened. Since she was closer to the noise, I asked if she had seen anything, but she hadn't. She heard it though. Our room was always pitch black at night when the door was closed. To confirm if it was the same sound I had heard, I asked her questions about what she experienced, and her description matched mine exactly. It sounded as if the fan was being smashed into the floor right in front of her. Yet she saw and felt nothing. Even today, all I can say is, what the hell? Like, really, what the bleep was that? Now, let me share another short experience from that haunted apartment. One evening in the living room, the farthest part of the house from my parents' room where my dad slept in preparation for his graveyard shift, I heard someone calling my name. I had only entered the living room briefly to grab something, and I didn't need to turn on the light. However, I heard my name being spoken loud and clear. It wasn't a whisper or a scream. It was as if someone nearby wanted my attention. Without suspecting anything, I responded saying, "Yes, Mika," assuming it was my cousin since her bedroom was located behind a door in the living room. The voice sounded feminine, almost familiar. Her door was open, but the room was dark. I stepped inside and turned on the lights, only to find no one there. The only other person in the house with me was my dad, fast asleep. Apart from that one shared experience between my sister and me, none of the other family members who lived with me ever encountered anything unusual or out of the ordinary. I was just 16 years old and homeless in Long Beach, California, back in 1980. My mom was in federal prison, and my dad lived in Texas, so I found myself staying in cars and garages to survive. Being a hard drug user already, I had experienced my fair share of troubles. In fact, I had been arrested for possession of 25 pounds of marijuana in Huntington Beach. But that's a story for another time. One day, while hitchhiking from downtown to Belmont Shores, I was given a ride by a rather peculiar guy. Despite his strange demeanor, I wasn't particularly worried. As we drove down Ocean Boulevard, he casually mentioned that he needed to make a short detour to pick up some Valiums. I agreed. and we turned onto Coronado Street, driving a few blocks up the road. He parked in front of a small apartment building, assuring me that he would be right back. I stayed in the car while he went from the apartment to the car, explaining that his cousin had locked the Valiums in a safe. He had paged him and was waiting for him to call with the combination. He then asked if I wanted to come up and smoke a joint. Being a pothead myself, I agreed, and we headed upstairs. Upon entering the apartment, I immediately scanned the room for any signs of danger. This guy was kind of strange, and Long Beach is known for its eccentric characters. I noticed a pair of scissors and some other scattered items around the room, which was relatively clean and well kept. As I continued to survey the surroundings, he reached under the couch, seemingly grabbing a weed tray. He asked if I had ever seen one of these, and as I focused on what he held in his hand, to my surprise, it was a pair of flex cuffs. Before I could react, he said, "Try 'em on," and launched an attack. He grabbed my wrist and swiftly pulled out a can of mace, spraying it directly into my face. Although he managed to secure one zip tie around my wrists, I managed to free one hand as he tightened it. Instinctively, I jumped up, engaging in a struggle to reach the scissors. With the scissors in hand, he caught me in a bear hug from behind, attempting to restrain my arms. I fought for my life, stabbing him in the face as forcefully as I could. His grip shifted, pinning my arms, and he began choking me from behind. Unable to breathe and feeling the weight of imminent death, I decided to play dead, going limp, as if I had given up. He released me, dropping me to the floor and dragged me by my arm into the bathroom. He opened the bathroom door, turned on the sink water, and instructed me to wash my face. He left me standing there, and that's when I saw an opportunity. I quickly jumped onto the rim of the bathtub. He extended his arm through the partially open bathroom door, holding a towel. I decided that I would leap out of the second-story window, but as I saw his arm sticking through the door, I realized I couldn't escape that way. So I used my body to block the door, causing him to fall backward, and I seized the chance to jump over him and make a dash for the front door. To my horror, I discovered that the front door had a key lock on the inside. My heart sank momentarily, but then I instinctively turned the doorknob, and to my surprise, it opened. I rushed outside, frantically pounding on the doors of every apartment unit in the complex, shouting, "Police! Police! Call the police!" The complex had around 12 units, and I ran and yelled, desperately seeking help. Finally, I reached the downstairs area where two guys were tossing a football in the street. They must have been taken aback by my distressed state and the zip tie around my wrist. Sensing something was wrong, they asked me what was happening, and I quickly recounted the terrifying ordeal I had just endured. Without hesitation, they decided to assist me. They cut off the zip tie, and as the strange guy tried to leave, the guys who came to my aid prevented him from escaping, making it clear that the police were on their way. Soon enough, the sound of sirens filled the air as 3 police cars arrived, with lights flashing and sirens blaring. The officers approached me, asking for an explanation of what had transpired. I shared the harrowing details of the incident, leaving nothing out. The police officers went up to the guy's apartment to investigate, and after their examination, they returned to inform me that I would have to accompany them back to the apartment. Reluctantly, I followed them, filled with trepidation at the thought of entering that place again. Inside, the guy claimed that I had attempted to rob him and stabbed him in the face. He vehemently denied any wrongdoing, even asserting that he wasn't gay. However, the police officers conducted a thorough search of the apartment, and to their surprise, they discovered some incriminating evidence, an assortment of items suggesting a different narrative. They also found the cut zip tie that had bound my wrists, further corroborating my version of events. The truth slowly unraveled before their eyes. With the evidence against him mounting, the police officers decided to take me outside for further discussion. As a juvenile, they explained that if they were to arrest him, I would be involved in the legal proceedings as well. Concerned about the involvement of my parents, I made a difficult decision. I refused to press charges. I did not want my family to become entangled in the legal process, so I expressed my unwillingness to move forward. Acknowledging my choice, the police left, and I continued on my own troubled path. Eventually, my mom was released from prison, and I ended up moving to Texas for 5 years. Upon my return to Long Beach, I discovered that my mom and sister had bought a house just across the street from the 12-plex, where the traumatic incident had occurred. One day, my sister excitedly introduced me to her new husband, and to my astonishment, I almost had a heart attack. It was one of the guys who had come to my rescue on that fateful day. Recognizing each other, he said, "Where do I know you from?" It all clicked, and I replied, "You remember the kid with the zip tie?" He couldn't believe it, exclaiming, "No fucking way." It was a bizarre twist of fate. A strange coincidence that brought our paths back together. We reminisced about that unforgettable event, acknowledging the impact it had on both of us. It was just one crazy story among the many I'd accumulated over the years, each serving as a reminder of the resilience and survival instinct ingrained within me. And so, life moved on, leaving behind the haunting memories of that nightmarish encounter. But the scars, both visible and hidden, remained a testament to the strength I found within myself during those dark and uncertain times. Growing up, I always felt uneasy living on my highway. It was out in the middle of nowhere. My grandparents owned the only store that was close, which surprisingly, being next to the highway and the only store for miles, didn't get a lot of customers. Honestly, I didn't think much of the strange occurrences. The lights coming on, scratches on the roof of my room, noises coming from the woods, and most of all, the deaths. A man had passed away in my grandparents' room a few years before we moved in, but nothing ever came of it. A few years ago, my grandma started seeing orbs or shadows. She said there was a light-colored one and a pure black one, and they never brought harm. But the black one would always seem to try and get to my grandma, and the white one would stop it just before it could reach her. Around the same time, I started to dabble in spirituality. Tarot cards, black salt, Greek mythology and such. I believed, and still believe, in ghosts, demons, angels, even skinwalkers. Or skinnies, as I call them. I can recall a few instances that I truly cannot forget. The time a skinwalker was in the woods, waiting for me and my grandma to come even a step closer. Strange occurrences when I was alone in the house. The uneasy feeling that something was always watching me. Even the nightmares and times that I woke up in the middle of the night. But the top 3 instances that terrify me the most are the stories I'll be sharing here. Instance 1. This was back in 2020. 1. My neighbor had given me her 3 cats. She couldn't care for it anymore. Well, the 2 bobcats were outside cats, while the other one was an inside cat. The inside cat got pregnant, or was pregnant when we got her. She cared for the babies, but one day she went outside and never came back. She always came back. We went looking for her near the wood lining, but I didn't see her. I had seen the back half of a cat, however, and right after that, the flashlights me and my grandma had showed a little bit of a shadow. And when I say that thing was huge, I don't know what it is to this day, but I know it wasn't a wild animal. Instance 2. I had watched a movie that was claimed to be haunted. I can't recall the name of it, but it was a weird movie. Well, while watching it, I was alone, and surprise, surprise, it was storming outside. Well, halfway through the movie, all the power went out, and I heard a sharp screaming. Type sound blast through my headphones. I almost cried, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if it had something to do with the movie I watched or what. Last instance, the nightmares. I had just gotten comfortable sleeping in my own room due to past trauma. Well, it was all good at first until the nightmares started. It was excruciating. I could feel the pain with each gunshot or cut or cat accident. My dreams were so vivid to the point I forced myself to pull an ungodly amount of all-nighters. Not to mention the times I would wake up to my speaker being on or inclines in volume from the TV. I'm not saying these instances are related to the abnormalities of life or ghosts, but please, whatever you do, don't move on to Highway 441. That's the chilling tale of life on Highway 441, where the inexplicable and unsettling become a part of everyday existence, leaving those who experience it forever changed. When my son was 2 years old, he started behaving oddly, like he was playing and talking to someone or something that his father and I couldn't see. He would throw his toys down the hallway and then run away, murmuring words. When I asked him what he was doing, he would always reply that he was giving his toys to the boy to play with. Although there was nobody there, it was always cold in that hallway, and the garage that connected to it. I was curious and asked him what the boy's name was. He told me that the boy's name was Don. When I asked him what Don was doing, he said he was waiting for his mom to come and pick him up. We dismissed it as an imaginary friend and thought nothing more of it. But things took a turn for the worse when my son started waking up in the middle of the night, screaming that Don wouldn't let him sleep and kept tickling his toes. This sent shivers down my spine, and I started sleeping with my son in my bed every night. This continued for 6 months until the real estate agent informed us that the owner of the house had passed away, and his children were selling the property. After moving out, I stumbled upon a local news article about the owner of our old rental, praising him for his contribution to the community. As I read further, I recognized the name. It was Don. It all came flooding back to me. My son's imaginary friend was our home's former owner. He must have been waiting for his mother to come and take him to the other side. This experience changed my perspective on imaginary friends forever. Growing up, my parents shared a story with me that happened in the mid-90s. They had just started dating a couple of months prior and decided to go on a weekend getaway to Prague, a beautiful city full of history and charm. During their trip, they wanted to make the most of their time and decided to join a guided city tour. As luck would have it, they found a tour conducted in German since Prague was a popular destination for Germans. The tour guide was friendly, and my parents quickly struck up conversations with the other participants. Among them was a young German couple whom they instantly connected with. The four of them decided to grab drinks together after the tour since they got along so well. The guided tour lasted about 3 hours, taking them to various landmarks and attractions throughout the city. The last stop was a tower that offered a breathtaking view of Prague. Excitedly, everyone wanted to go up and enjoy the panoramic scenery, except for the young man my parents had been chatting with the whole time. He claimed to be exhausted and offered to wait by the tower's entrance, promising to watch over everyone's bags. My parents and the man's girlfriend made their way up the tower, relishing the stunning vistas and capturing the beauty of the city in their memories. After about 15 minutes, they returned to the spot where the man had been waiting, only to find him mysteriously gone. Puzzled, they scanned the area, but he was nowhere in sight. Strangely enough, all the bags were still neatly arranged in front of the bench where he had planned to rest. Nothing had been taken. A sense of unease washed over the young man's girlfriend. He was always responsible and would never leave their belongings unattended, let alone vanish without a trace. Concerned, my parents decided to stay with her, hoping that he had perhaps fallen ill or encountered some unexpected trouble. They checked with nearby shops, bars, and establishments, asking if anyone had seen him, but no one had any information about his whereabouts. As time passed, most of the people dispersed, leaving my parents and the young woman alone in their search. Realizing they needed to involve the authorities, they accompanied her to the police station where she filed a missing person report. The police listened attentively, but shared a troubling fact. Prague had a known issue with human trafficking, especially involving tourists. It wasn't uncommon for people to disappear under suspicious circumstances. The police suggested that someone may have lured the young man into a secluded area, taking advantage of his kindness or asking for assistance. The possibilities were chilling. Over the years, my parents maintained contact with the young man's girlfriend, but the updates remained dishearteningly consistent. There were no breakthroughs in the search for the missing man. Life went on, and my parents eventually lost touch with the young woman about a decade ago. The last they heard, she had found happiness in marriage and had started a family. But even with her newfound joy, she couldn't shake the lingering thoughts about her young lover and the question of whether he might still be out there somewhere, waiting to be found. This haunting tale has forever changed my perspective on imaginary friends and the unsettling mysteries that can lurk within the shadows of our lives. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the most innocuous encounters can have profound and lasting effects, leaving us with unanswered questions and a sense of lingering unease.